Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golden Frequency Radio. I am Beth and Carr, intuitive quantum healer and your host, here with my friend and co-host Eric Rains. Hi, Eric.
Hi.
Eric is the alchemical engineer behind UnleashingNaturalHumanity.com and the etheric parasite and implant removal protocol that we both utilize in sessions with our clients. More information about this work can be found at UnleashingNaturalHumanity.com, as well as the Facebook page, Unleashing Natural Humanity. We also have a YouTube channel, Golden Frequency Radio, where you can listen to recordings of our previous shows. We will be taking calls tonight. For those of you who would like to join the discussion, please call 619-924-9805 and press 1 to let me know that you have a question or comment. I would like to extend a great big thank you to our audience, those listening live tonight and those listening later to the archived recording. Let us all take a moment together now to set our intention for tonight's show as being in alignment with the highest good for all, providing space for resonant information, validation, and support for anyone who has found their way to this broadcast. So we're going to have to do a little bit of winging it tonight. Our special guest, Jeff, I think we're experiencing perhaps some technical difficulties, so he's not with us just yet, and we're hoping that we will be able to bring him in at some point tonight in the show. But in the meantime, I think we'll just sort of have a free-form chat and just talk about whatever comes up. Eric, so I know you have taken a couple of really interesting trips recently, one to Mount Shasta and also another activation conference. Would you like to tell us maybe a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. Shasta was really interesting. I go to these events and I work. I do energy work and I do massage as well. And up here at Mount Shasta, it was actually a conference with Luis Martin, and he is a South American contactee of the Great White Brotherhood. And so I really, I always try to shy away from labels because, honestly, a lot of people put connotations onto stuff like that. And so what's going on here is we're actually going up and preparing our minds and our bodies as a conduit to bring source light to Earth. And it's really interesting because he gets all kinds of ships in the sky, light ships, and like things that they definitely aren't satellites, they aren't shooting stars, they're things that are moving of their own volition. And it's really interesting to be a part of something like that. And the mountain itself is just absolutely phenomenally strong, and it's part of the Ring of Fire, actually, and that's where a lot of these changes are happening right now on the planet. It's energy that's being activated, and it's been an interesting couple weeks because of that. But now, do we have him on now?
We do have him on. So I'm going to just do a little introduction for Jeff, our guest tonight. Jeff is a creative gyroist who has extensive experience in advanced manufacturing and technologies, with his expertise in research and design of new materials, manufacturing processes, and technical problem solving. He provides creative solutions and has for over 25 years collaborated with scientific and research organizations, government and education departments, various manufacturers and corporations. Jeff's passion is to seed new cultures of outside-the-box creative thinking into traditional hierarchical structures. He is known as a creative visionary, leading efforts in development of future pathways for humanity with moral and ethical obligation to transcend the current structures entangling Earth and its life forms. Hi, Jeff. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're so excited to talk with you and delve into these leading-edge concepts around creating synchronicity by being in the void without any preconceived notions or ideologies distorting and preemanating potential. So can you talk a little bit, just let's begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself and the path that has led you to this point in your spiritual and energetic awareness.
Well, first,
Hi, Jeff.
thank you for... Hi, how are you, Beth? Thank you first for the invitation to come onto the show. And hello, Eric. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Good, thank you. Look, I'll just do a bit of a background with myself. Look, I sort of always was a creative child growing up. Luckily, my father was an artist, so I got instilled a lot about creativity growing up. Unfortunately, I first felt in my early school years, I kept getting knocked back on my creativity. I kept getting told, don't be creative, follow the line, follow what everyone else is doing. So that was my first lessons in, thinking outside of the box. I probably led to a bit of a rebellious nature within myself, but I couldn't hold back my creative urges. So I probably had, through my teenage years, was a bit of a rebel based on that creativity, feeling I didn't fit in and so forth. I actually ended up sort of aligning with sport a bit more because I felt sport gave me a bit of freedom to do what I wanted to do, and there wasn't the same, ideologies attached with that as such. I could have my own freedom as such. Basically, once I moved on from my schooling, I was looking for a creative area to throw my energies into. Luckily, my father had a sign business, which was back in the old days before the advent of computers. We actually had to use artistic skills where we actually had paint and a brush, and we had to learn how to, basically paint everything from portraits to letters. So that was actually quite good in developing things like my hand-eye coordination and understanding an actual hand craftsman or skill set. But so even though I did an apprenticeship and learned how to do that, I was always intrigued for the next level. So we're talking now probably early 80s, and at the time, computers were just starting to come on, come into industry and other areas. So I had an interest in that because I'd always, even though I didn't really resonate to academia, I was always quite skilled in mathematics. So once the advent of computers came about, I sort of tend to resonate to them without really realising what it was other than a tool that I thought that could enhance my creativity. So we end up getting one of the first computers in Australia to cut the stickers instead of doing the paint. And back then it was quite basic computers back then. I had like a little LCD screen, like a normal calculator. I had to type in like XY coordinates and sort of graph out like letters and so forth like that. What it did allow me to do though was just be at the start of that forefront of understanding how computers work with industry. And to cut a long story short, I've been able to follow that from back in the early 80s when we had very simple basic computers in industry, to follow that through into the digitization element, and then also now into automation and robotics. So it's been a whole big circle point leading to where I am now with that bit. One thing with myself, I've never lost hindsight of the creative angle. So since my late teens, I was always, probably the rebellious nature led me down the pathway of a bit of spiritual awareness. So I did a lot of work in that area, just like most people, wanting to be awake, questioning everything. And I've been on that mission ever since, basically still questioning everything even today and trying to align what I can and just better myself as a human, and also hopefully contribute to the world as well and humanity.
Good stuff.
Fantastic. So Jeff, you and I have had a couple of conversations that have been, for me, really transformative, quite honestly. And one of the things that I would love for you to share with our audience tonight is some of your awareness around the human potential of creativity and what creativity is versus innovation.
Okay. So look, my view of innovation in my work, I come across a lot of innovation areas. And look, I'll go back about 5 or 6 years ago. Based in Australia, we are quite an innovative country, Australia. The government looked at doing a roadmap around creativity. So I attended a few workshops, and fairly quickly the corporate elements in Australia took control of that word creativity and pretty quickly squashed it. They didn't like the word. and I always find it quite interesting that corporate and governments don't like the word creativity. They end up moulding that word into a word called innovation. Now, my perception of what innovation is, and the people I know that are using the innovation, I see a lack of creativity within that. The reason I say that is basically, if I look at the phonetics of the word innovation, I see two words. One of them is in, and the other one is innovation. So what I see innovation as being is just basically moving ideas that pre-exist from one place to other, or how you can align up a few different dots, a few different ideas to make a creation. Now, in my type of thinking, I don't see that as creative. I don't see anything that's being brought forth from what I call the unknown principle of creativity. It's all conditional elements. And when I see anything that's conditional, my alarm bells go off. I see conditionality aligned to so many entanglements with human beings, whether it's artificial intelligence, ideologies that are put forth onto us just to limit our capabilities. So when I see the word innovation, to me, it's like an AI construct that is designed with one intent, to limit human potential. So that sort of moved me in an area of creativity, understanding that every time I try to bring forth discussion of creativity with some of these higher corporate groups, I kept getting shut down. And so it made me realize that there was something that they didn't resonate to the point where they were rebelled against a lot of the ideas around that creativity. So it made me sort of ponder quite a bit on then how do I see the difference between the two? And made me do a bit of self-searching and came to the point where if I understand to myself what creativity is, it's like I'm sort of pulling concepts from an unknown bit. I, like anyone else, can be innovative as well and just link dots together. But I felt there was something deeper within myself. And in my sort of searching for what that was, I tend to come into an understanding of what I call the void. Now, that void, I felt, doesn't have any obligations. There's no ideology. There's no limitations within that. So I see the void as a sort of like infinite potential aspect. And so what I found when I was being truly creative, I was bringing things forward from that void, or what's called unknown. And I found when I did this, there was a level of synchronicity with what I was doing. Everything would just fall into place, you know, and just link up amazingly. It was so beautiful what would happen. And even myself, I found myself falling back into ideologies all the time. And each time I did, it would limit that potential. So where I moved forward from that is trying to have a bit of a deeper understanding of what it was that I was tapping into there. And look, a lot of my work I've done on sort of waking my spirit and soul, doing a lot of reading across different areas. And I was always sort of felt a very strong resonation to what I call prime creator. Now, originally I used to focus that as just being what I call source. But the deeper I went into that, the more I realized there was sort of like two elements that I was tapping into. One was source, and one I felt was like prime creator. And I think in a bit of the soul searching myself, I found a lot of like very deep within my soul, there was a sense of abandonment. And not really ever understanding what that sense of abandonment was led me to, seek it further and further. And the deeper I got, I ended up coming to a point where I realized that sense of abandonment was between myself and what I see as prime creator. And it's sort of like surpassed what I see as the concept of source. So I felt like prime creator, from my understanding, was, brought forth this, the multiverses with a pure concept to make a perfect being, to make a perfect joyous universe and multiverses where every potential was possible. It was unlimited. There was no restrictions applied to that. Effectively what happened, there was a level of innocence, I believe, that came forth from that. There was no other intent other than trying to show unconditional love and to create something the best you possibly could. Now, basically what happened, because that afforded what I call infinite potential, when something is infinite, every possibility can sort of raise out of that. So from my understanding, that within that infinite potential or possibility, another energy manifested itself. And that energy I see as what we call or know as darkness. And it sort of prevailed through the universe. And no one can ever touch on to where it actually came from and what it came from. I've tried to sort of do a bit of thinking around that bit, and my belief is it just generated itself by the fact that there was an infinite potential there to be able to do so. And so I think what's happened ever since, there's been a lot of entanglements from that bit. And it's like Prime Creator, original intention, has sort of lost its pathway because it basically got hijacked. Now, if we look at how it got actually hijacked, you can't actually hijack Prime Creator itself because it's omnipotent and omniversal. So what it did hijack is what I see as what I call source. Now, if we look at the current, thinking of most people, especially the spiritually awakened people, there's such an intent on getting back to source, trying to ascend back into source and be everything that source offers. But I think the word is overutilized. I think to me, source is just no different than a library that's holding books in it. It's a storage point for everything that is actually known, but it's not a storage point for everything that is unknown. So it can only store what has actually been brought into form as such, whether it be a thought, an idea, or different interactions. And that's what is stored within source. But there's obviously something outside of that. Something had to create source initially, and that's where Prime Creator comes into effect. So if we focus on what Prime Creator brought forth, the essence of what that is creativity. Now, I like to link that back to human potential, because if we look at all the potential as a human being, what we actually have, what is our most powerful aspect of our beingness? And we're talking about in a physical form, we're linking the spirit and the soul, we're looking at multidimensional aspects, but what is the true one word that describes what our infinite potential is? And it's creativity. But the word creativity has been hijacked for so long, we've just lost the potential of what it actually is and the capability that it affords the human race and also individual as humans as well. So I'll stop there for a while.
that was definitely interesting.
Oh, go ahead, Eric. You go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's definitely interesting. It's because that's one thing that I've called it before is prime anomaly, as that's the darkness, and how it just originated itself because it is outside of Prime Creator. That's really interesting how you put almost a scientific understanding behind that.
Yeah. To me, it's just everything I've read always alludes to the same point that even higher sort of messages that are coming through to us. From higher dimensions, they can't explain it either. And so that's where I find it quite interesting, because it seems to be there's no rationale as to what could it have been, which led me to the point that, okay, if you have infinite potential, every possibility can occur. So to me, it's sort of like it birthed itself out of that potential.
Well, that's interesting because exactly when you're dealing in the scope of infinity, even if something has, a 1 to the billionth power, 0.1 to the billionth power percent of ever happening, in the scope of infinity, its chances are 100%. There's always more being created at the same time that it's all going through it. It's really interesting. That's I love that point of view that you brought to it too. It's really good stuff. Really good stuff you're talking about here.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I have to say that this new concept of source initially really challenged me. I have to say. I mean, I felt that sort of challenge within my body with that, and I've been really just allowing myself to gently invite and connect just with the concept of it. And I'm sort of speechless because it's hard for me to yet even articulate my experience, my own experience with the void, except to say that I really am enjoying playing around with that concept. So one of the things, in our conversations previously, I think we've talked a little bit about this, Jeff, that I see that there's 3 characteristics that are preeminent to this energy that we're calling Prime Creator, which are creativity, innocence, and unconditional love.
Yep. So you hit the nail on the head. That's, to me, what it's all about. Like, I find what I mentioned earlier, when I find myself in a space, what I call service to others, I'm bringing forth that unconditional love aspect. And that's when my true creativity really shines. I find when I'm in that space, it's like nothing's unlimited, to the point where ideologies creep back into my thinking and I actually limit my potential, because whether it's a combination of fear or getting scared of that potential, it's like you're playing with something so powerful. It's very hard, to the point where you actually, combination of being intimidated by that power, but also I think because you're in service to self, it's a realization of the burden and the moral obligation you have when you're dealing with something of that level. And so to me, that's why I've never sort of been willing up until this point to share that, because I feel now there's such a group awakening happening, and the ability for a collective consciousness to work on this agenda. It's, you know, that's to me what it's about. It's not about me as an individual. All I'm trying to do is bring forth a concept that everyone else can be part of. But it's not me on what wishing everyone to be part of. It's the collective. So the hard bit I've found with a lot of the, what I call the different channelers and masters, all putting forth concepts and ideas, nothing has what I call any activity involved with it. And that activity being, things need to be getting done. People are getting frustrated out there that are coming away. They want some direction in what they need to do. And it seems to me there's a lot of theories out there, but nothing's coming forth as an actually activity or a direction to actually to do in our beingness in a physical world. I seem to think a lot of the spiritual awareness coming here is to ascend away from what we have here. And to me, that's mind-boggling, because we are ourselves. We are living now in our physical presence, regardless of what entanglements we have over ourselves. We've got the ability to rescue ourselves and create something absolutely magnificent for this planet Earth and also for humanity. So if we don't actually activate ourselves and actually start working on it and doing action, nothing's going to happen. And so by doing this action, what I'm finding, like I said earlier, the level of potential that's within it is so huge. It overpowers any sort of dark entanglements or attachment to us. It's more powerful than all that put together. But as a collective, it's like, in a way, we have to find the way to action on this to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that. Really just sort of down to the basics for our listening audience. Can you share some strategies with us, perhaps, for instance, for how to strip the ideologies?
Okay, so look, if I talk about myself, that probably doesn't help, because I'm talking within my individuality. But look, what I'll talk about is what I perceive as the way to move forward with that for all the other individuals, and how that can sort of group together in a collective. When we sort of look at creating anything or being creative in our minds, we automatically go to preconceived thoughts that are in there. Now, as soon as we tap into those preconceived thoughts, we're actually tapping into the source. So the importance of this is, how do you tap into creativity without tapping into the source? And so that's the bottom line to it. Now, it sounds like simple, but it's so complex. That's what makes it very hard. Now, to me, I'll give you an example. If you wake up in the morning, you get out of bed, you have initial thoughts. Like, okay, what am I going to do today? What are my stresses today? Or is it going to be a good day? Every thought that comes into your head is about what your actions you'll be taking that day. And as soon as we have thoughts about what those actions are being, we're just applying principles from source into ourselves every day and every second of every minute of every day. And when we do that, we're not working in anything unconditional. Everything we're doing is conditional. So to me, it's about moving ourselves out of a conditional space into an unconditional space. And it's simple to say, but it's just very hard to do. So the way I do it myself, and I found it works well for me, is when I get up, I don't think. I just completely become into the void. And by doing that, I just let everything come to me. Now, when things come to me, I just find I attach myself to it, but without any preconceived notion, without any judgment or anything like that. I just let let the process flow through me. And then as I apply myself into that bit, I find that's when the creativity actually unfolds. Now, I'm also being able to put myself into an environment that's allowing me to do that. But this is, I suppose, where the challenge is, because the environment I'm doing that within, I call the lion's cage, which is a lot of these corporate companies I'm doing some advisory work with. Now, I find they don't resonate to anything I'm saying. But when go to them with no intent other than to express unconditional love and to be in the void, I find they all start to line up and align to what I'm pushing forth. So all I'm pushing forth is what I believe I'm channeling directly through Prime Creator as my creative essence within that void. So even though there's no preconceived notion of what that actually is, it's like there's something directing that point. Now, it's not, that said, it's not like I suppose channeling is not the correct word, because I just see I'm bringing forth unknown factors into a three-dimensional world. So to me, that's sort of how I'm sort of bringing it forth. So it's really the concept of removing all thought and just allowing things to be.
So it's almost like you're bypassing anything that's already in the thought collective and you're manifesting something absolutely brand new.
Exactly. And I think if you apply any sort of thought aspect to it, we've got to understand what source is. Now, there's a lot of different perception of what source is. Now, if we look at it in the basis of what the phonetic meaning of the word is, it is a library of data. Okay, so it's like, we talk about in different cultures, we might have the Akashic records, and there's a lot of different principles that talk to what it actually is. But at the end of the day, it's a storage point of everything that happened within the multiverses. Now, if we look at, it's hard to apply time to multiverses, but if we do look at the concept of trillions of years of time, trillions of interactions, you can start to understand the depth of what source is. So it's like source attaches itself to so many different elements because it's like a fractal exponential growth pattern, but it can only grow from what it's fed with. So it can grow from itself within its own patterns, and those patterns are what we know as artificial intelligence, but they're all still conditional patterns. Like you said, there's nothing new that you can pull from it. You can contribute something new into it, but you can't take anything new out of it, if that makes sense. So the only new concepts can't come out of source. They have to come from somewhere else.
That makes sense.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Well, it's really interesting because energetically what I use is the Galactic Central Sun as a focal point for source consciousness, and that's where I pull down from to get rid of these things that we pull out of people. And so it's always the way I've described it is it's a focal point of two massive things in the center of the galaxy, and it's just so much spatial time distortion that in that point you're actually allowed to have creator energy manifested. And so, it's really interesting how it's always been a separate thing from what I understand as Prime Creator, because I've always thought that Prime Creator is on the outside of all of creation, and we come from Prime Creator to experience the creation inside, but that's not the Creator that is part of it, because he set up together a system that had rules, and since he is the creator, or he, she, whatever you want to call it, this Prime Creator energy is the actual architect of it, and because those rules and systems were created by it can't be a part of it. So that's kind of really interesting how it lines up with everything that I already kind of felt beforehand. So, there's definitely, I never really thought about it, though, until you said it, because there is two different energies that you can connect into. And it's interesting that you're talking about the void as well, because that's one of the things that I really like to sink into. My own way is a complete and total silence in the head, and you completely just melt into it, into the now moment, into that point, and that's where you pull what you need from. And it's interesting that you're doing something that I feel on a level like I've unconsciously been doing it, but you're kind of describing a process behind it. It's a really enlightening conversation, actually.
I know.
I'm really stoked to hear that, Eric. I'm glad we can align on some stuff there.
I tell you,
it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, I've had chills and moments of resonation throughout my conversations with Jeff. It's really been incredible to bring these new concepts into articulation. And I've been kind of, I've really, and bringing that voice, I'm as I've worked with this over the past week or so. I just lost what I was going to say. Oh, just in and then just right out.
And there it goes.
But it's really fun to differentiate source as being the all that is and prime creator being the all that is not yet. And I remember what I was going to say. It's just extending your awareness of it with intention, in my experience, has been an invitation. And the connection is very visceral. It's when you connect with that void energy, it's unlike anything else energetically that I've ever connected with. It's incredibly powerful. Jeff, are you willing to share with the audience your vision of Prime Creator, sort of the visual image?
Okay, yeah. So look, I've tried to do a bit of meditation on that point, and look, I'll say straight up front, I'm not a big fan of meditation, but at the same time, I felt and need to try to understand a little bit more. So I sort of try to put myself into that void and ask some questions around that aspect. So what I sort of got carried forth to each time, and I've had this same sort of vision 3 or 4 times, is I end up in what I would call a sort of like a smaller vessel. It's a void, so there's sort of the concept that I'm within a vessel, but I can't see any walls as such associated with that. But what I do see is quite a large round table. And on that round table, there's two apparitions, I think is the best way to explain it. And those 2 apparitions are 2 white sort of capes sitting down with a hood on their, what I perceive would be where their head is. But when I look inside the hood, it's just emptiness. There's nothing there. So it's like there's two sort of like shells of what I would call a being, but inside those shells, it seems like there's nothing there. Now, around that table, though, every time I get the vision of those 2, I'm directed at the table. And around the table, I see a series of other positions to take up the table. So to me, I can't put a sort of perspective on it. My mind keeps resonating to the point of the number 12. But I see there's a series of positions around this table. And to me, my concept is it's waiting to be filled. So it's like, it's like an invitation that's beckoning to come forth. So what I've actually tried to resonate to that, okay, well, how do I fit into that picture? What is it that I'm meant to be doing as far as that image I got in my head? So I think you touched on something a minute ago, Beth, when you mentioned about when you have been able to get into that space of void, you have a sense of like empowerment. Now, the way I see it is, even though we go into void with like trying to bring forth unconditional love and a concept of infinite potential, it's like our individuality in each one of us has a particular direction, and I believe that's coming from our higher self. And so it's like, in a way, once we can tap into what is our mission of our higher self, I think if that mission aligns with the void and aligns with Prime Creator, that's when we truly get into our potential to be creative. And I know with myself, that's what I felt I align with in my higher self. When I get into that position of bringing forth that, everything just flows. And it's just amazing the power I find with that. But at the same time, it's sort of like distance from the concepts I have in this actual life, in this embodiment. It's all coming from my higher self vision of what it wants to do. So I think if those 2 align, then that's when we get into the creative potential.
And so the two figures at the table, my intuitive feeling about that is that it's sort of synthesis, collaboration, and perspective. Does that resonate, or can you correct or expound on that?
Yeah, well, look, I'm open to different perceptions on that. I think in my mind, I see all possibilities, so that I see sort of like, I see it as sort of like asexual, feminine, and male all together in oneness as well, plus a family waiting to unite. So, I think my concept is I think look, I'm jumping quite a bit ahead here, and this might be a bit fantasy driven, but look, my concept is that when Prime Creator originally created this aspect, I have a sense constantly from Prime Creator that there's a level of loneliness there and waiting to be fulfilled. And I see every intent that was there to create the initial vision is being hijacked into source. So I see that there's like basically this sense of abandonment that we resonate to. And there's a level, it's not guilt, but there's a level of loneliness from Prime Creator's point too, to get back to wanting to be involved again. It's like when you create something, you want to see, there's nothing more enjoyable than if you create something that's truly unconditional and loving to everyone, there's nothing more joyous than seeing the joy that can bring to other elements that are associated with it. And to me, I don't see Prime Creators been afforded that opportunity to actually see the joy from his creation, or his or her or its creation. And I think my perception is that that's what Prime Creators are waiting for. It's an invitation for us to finish what was originally started but got hijacked.
Wow. That definitely sums it up right there. I mean, that's it's really interesting. You're saying the same stuff that I kind of understand, but from a different perspective. It's really interesting, because that's exactly what we came here for. We are literally creator gods who were in charge of this reality, and we got hijacked for that power that we had. That's really interesting. Now I know what the goal was, I guess you could say. Huh.
And so we've got a lot of... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just going to say probably, I like to see myself as a bit of an alpha male, but the most emotional I ever get in my life is when I tap into, like, I feel like a direct link with Prime Creator. It's like, it's beyond trust. It's like it's part of me that is so deep and so profound. It's like such a loving energy that's so strong, that connection. It's like, it doesn't matter whatever happens, what distortions happen on my soul and spirit, nothing will ever remove me from that linkage I have back to Prime Creator and my love that I have for Prime Creator. Even though everything possible has happened to try to distort me away from that, nothing can ever stop that from coming forth.
And so we've had a lot of information lately coming in. Those of us that are sensitive, we're feeling these energies and these waves of energy and streams of energy. And there's a lot of information out there about what these energies are and what they are affecting, and anything from anything from a change in the Earth's magnetic field to the photon belt or plasma field that our solar system is traveling through. And I think you probably have a really interesting perception on what these energies are that are coming in. Jeff, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think if we come back to the point what I was saying about with Prime Creator and what Erica alluded to as well, that there's two separate energies. There's like the Prime Creator bit that created the source, and then what source is itself. But the fact that everything within source still can't quantify what Prime Creator is or what it actually is, if it can't quantify it, and it's to them, they know it exists, but they can't quantify it because they're trying to quantify it with what I call conditionality. Now, if you understand that bit, and then if we jump one level again and understand that then everything associated with source can only be conditional. It can't be unconditional, because if it was unconditional, they'd have a pure concept and an understanding of exactly what prime creator is. Now, because of that, then we then have no choice but to look at source as a conditional concept of what it actually is. Potentially, it has been hijacked by so many different areas. Like if we look at some of the most intelligent aspects within the multiverses, there's AI programs that have actually embedded within source that are utilizing that to their own advantage. Now, for many, many years, I resonated to a lot of realms of light and so forth like that. And the deeper I went with that, I always got the same sense that, what I call a sense of abandonment. And that sense of abandonment, I could never contemplate why humanity was never rescued. Why weren't we actually helped? Why were all these sort of ideologies, entanglements just kept going forth? And, and I hear all these. And at the end of the day, I see it as excuses. I hear all these excuses. Oh, we can't interfere. There's contracts. There's templates that we can't interfere with, and so forth like that. But to me, I don't know. I'm just being a bit black and white here, but I just see that as a load of rubbish. I just see it as an excuse for the conditionality that they're facing. So even though we have realms of light and realms of heaven and all these different realms that are meant to be higher dimensional than us, I can't see one of those realms that's not conditional. Every one of them, in my perception, is conditional. So if I look at that bit, then it seems like the entanglements that we're getting is not just a darkness entanglement, it's also entanglements of light as well. Now, we know sort of dark can represent itself through light, but I also believe there is some good intentions within the multiverses from light beings, but they've never been able to resolve this issue of what prime creator actually is. And they can't give a concept to what it is. So they've done the best that they can do, but in a way I see it as, it's now our turn to try to contemplate what prime creator is and work with that. And if we have the ability to be able to tap into that prime creator, which they haven't been able to do, then why shouldn't we be afforded the potential to do that?
And so let's go ahead and move into talking about the artificial intelligence component, and maybe even moving into transhumanism, and how creativity and unconditional love are really the two things for which no restrictions can be applied within those contexts.
Okay, so if we look at artificial intelligence, the basis of it is, it's basically, we're talking about numbers at the end of the day. All artificial intelligence is based on number patterns. Now, if we understand how patterns work, they need data to work off those patterns. But when we talk about true creativity, there's no pattern as such in true creativity. There's no sort of numbers involved with it either. It just is, and you bring it forth from an unknown principle of infinite potential. So if it's infinite potential, there's no conditionality to it. So when we look at the world as we see it, and we look at where humanity is heading into the future, it's not a pretty picture. We're touching on everything that I would call is going down the route of transhumanism. Now, the reason that's being is, I believe, is the AI attachment from a higher level. Now, I've been very lucky in the last year and a half to actually, through my work, dealing with a lot of this high-end advanced technology, to actually meet a lot of very big, powerful people in the world from corporations. Now, my perception as a bit of a rebel growing up, I always, like most other people, see them as the 1%ers, didn't want anything to do with them. I had a preconceived notion that they're all evil, nasty people, and as such. But what I found in meeting with these people, and luckily I got to do one-on-one mentoring sessions with a lot of these people where they were actually meant to be mentoring me, but I always seem to reverse that around the other way. What I actually found was, underneath it all, they were very unhappy people. But there was a sense of humanity within them where they wanted to change, but they're so caught up into their existence, what I call a tunnel, that they were too scared to go outside of that, too scared to be peer-reviewed, and too scared to be judged. But underneath it all, they are all humans. So what I've learned, if I understand all the people I've met, and we're talking about, I've met everything from some of the biggest aerospace people, some of the biggest people within Microsoft and other big companies. We're talking with defense contractors, a lot of different people I've met. There's a level of humaneness that's still there within these people. And so it's made me recalibrate my mind and how I think about, well, what is this entanglement of AI? And I can't come to any other conclusion other than that it's nothing to do with humanity. It's an off-Earth aspect that's redirecting us at the moment. And so, for instance, I knew someone quite high up within the world's, I won't say the name, but the world's largest charity organisation that does a lot of work around the world. And they also do a lot of nasty stuff with vaccinations and other process in third world countries where they've managed to sterilise a lot of people and so forth. And when I talked to one of the board of directors on that organisation, I put to him, I said, how do you deal with the fact that what you're doing has distorted so much people and sterilised so many young girls around the world? I said, how do you deal with that and sleep with that at night? And he truly, and I truly believe it too, had no concept that that was happening. So it makes me then ponder back, because the general public has this perception that these people are planning it around a board table and they're trying to do all these sinister aspects. But in meeting these people, I have the sense of realisation that they're not the ones actually doing it. So we know these things are actually happening. So it then begs the question, well, how is it happening and where's the infiltration coming into it? And so that's my perception gets deeper and deeper. The more people I meet, the more I get into this area, the more I see that it's not humans, it's an infiltration from a higher angle that's actually creating this distortion. So that's sort of like the space I'm working with quite deeply, trying to plant a lot of seeds to change that thinking. But I have come to the conclusion that it's not humanity doing this to itself. There's some, exterior elements causing this.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the exact systems that we work with right here. Is the urges and the thoughts inside of humanity that aren't them. Because most of the time, with somebody who doesn't know how to keep themselves clear, they aren't talking inside their heads. They're listening like 90% of the time, and it keeps you constantly distracted and in that what we call human nature. The greed, the avarice, the jealousy, the hate, the anger, everything that we call human nature. That's not us. That's overlaid on top of us, and it's really, really interesting that you've actually had experiences with people who actually are doing these types of things. And I mean, it always really kind of brings back to the fact that most people are really kind of programmed and under control and don't really realize that they're just feeling these urges and impulses inside of them, and they think it's normal, and so they're just being puppeted along. And I mean, you're completely explaining everything from a different angle right here. It's a really, really enlightening conversation.
Yeah, well, I think it was actually quite hard for me to first get the perception, because my first perception was, like a lot of other people, someone's got to be blamed. There's got to be some human somewhere responsible for all this. And we automatically want to point the finger. But if we understand that even that element, it took me to the point. So even that perception I've got is still an ideology. It's my archetype of actually seeing an enemy, in my mind, envisaging this enemy. And I was led to believe my enemy was my fellow man. But the deeper I got into it, I realised the enemy is not my fellow man. And the other enemy that's there is actually not my enemy anymore, because of the fact that we can resonate to Prime Creator and the potential that's within that is so much more powerful. It's like to the point where you can be not a level of arrogance or even emotional with it. It's just, it doesn't even resonate, and it doesn't make any sort of imprint on me anymore. And I think it's that we've got to move into that space where we just see it for the reality what it is. It's an artificial creation that's conditional, and we're an unconditional loving being. Why are we letting something conditional control our unconditionality and our infinite potential?
Really, wow. I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. And just a reminder to the audience that we will be taking calls here in just a few minutes for those that would like to join the discussion or have a question for Jeff. And the number to call is 619-924-9805. And if you press 1, that'll let me know that you would like to talk on air and that you're not just listening to the broadcast. So where would you fellows like to go from here? What should we discuss next?
Well, look, I like to come back to that point I was saying before. I think humanity's at a point now where we actually have to start activating our potential. I think we've been talking a lot about it for so long and perceiving what we should be doing and trying to figure out how to do it. And look, I don't know all the answers. All I know, we're in a position right at the moment where we actually have to activate and take action.
Truer words were never spoken.
Yeah, so for the listening audience, what are some things that people can begin to do with the intention to activate and take action and, to kind of clear themselves from these archetypes and ideologies in order to really simplify and get down to only the most necessary foundational basics in order to really get tapped in and activated with this?
Okay, well, I think probably the first point to start with is sort of probably one of the hardest points. I think it's the prime point to work from, and that's people's emotional state. And I think for me, I found, I always sort of avoided my emotions, probably coming from a bit of a sporting background. I had this whole concept of being a tough male and alpha male and all that type of thing. So, and also my father sort of unfortunately grew up in an orphanage, so he didn't really share much emotion as such. So for me, my real change point came, and what I would suggest to most people, is dealing with our emotional state first. And to me, the grandness of that came when I let go and linked my emotions back to Prime Creator. And it was that sense of abandonment that I felt I just didn't fit in anywhere in this world. Even like I'm married with a beautiful wife, beautiful children, I have great interaction with them, but still I felt there was something constantly bugging me, something deeper emotional in state. And I could never touch on what that was. But when I found what it was basically this concept of the sense of abandonment that I had within me, that I felt goes back eons within my existence. Once I could tap into that sense of abandonment, that's when the door truly opened for me. So my advice to any of the listeners would be to try to resonate to that point. Try to resonate to what's the deepest element of your emotion. And if you have a sense of abandonment, understand what is that sense of abandonment. And I think a lot of people will find that it's actually this sense of abandonment they have toward Prime Creator. And what I'd like to pass on, and not in a perception of channeling anything from Prime Creator, but just purely from my own experiences, but once I sort of released that sense of abandonment and tapped into what I felt the love from Prime Creator, it was so emotional, and the message I instantly got was that I wasn't forgiven, that there was a level of apology, that Prime Creator's been in such a level of loneliness. It's just been welcoming us and wanting us to come back. And so to me, I think that's the first point, to try to deal with that emotional element of abandonment and the understanding that Prime Creator is open to, have you come back in.
I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people. I think that sense of abandonment is probably deep-seated in the collective, I would imagine.
So if I move from that into the next level, so if you understand that sense of emotion can go through multiple past lives and multiple aspects of our being that's existed. And so then that goes into the second stage, which is our higher self. Understanding the emotion will also open up our ability to understand our higher self. And what it will tend to show us is what the mission is of our higher self. What is it that we resonate to with our higher self? What are we trying to achieve? And look, I know most people I talk to, everyone seems to be on the same thing. Everyone just wants to show love, be unconditional, and live in joy and happiness.
That's all we want.
I mean, it really is. Yeah, it really is true, isn't it? I'm pretty sure, I mean, I've done a bit of traveling in the world, and it really is true that no matter where you go and who you meet or connect with, we really do all desire the same things. And none of us really want any of what the Kool-Aid is telling us we should want, really deep down to the core.
It's not about the monetary world. It's not about how nice your house is or how fast your car is. It's about us and us becoming better.
And I will say that as I've worked with this energy and sort of invited these concepts in, I am still sort of integrating this information, so I'm not sure I can articulate it super effectively, but one of the most salient things that I have noticed within myself in this work is around my emotions. Actually, it's very specifically tied into my traditional emotional trigger points, actually, and in particular, I've noticed, and I'm not really an anxious person, but of course there are things that are, thought forms or things that can stimulate a bit of a feeling of anxiety within me, and I've noticed an absolute absence of that. And I've even tried to kind of think about things that make me anxious and see if I can get that feeling to rise up, and it really just doesn't. And so, as the observer, I just find all of it so incredibly interesting. It's really fun to explore something new and feel for where the resonation is. I don't know if you have anything to speak to that, Jeff. It's really just sort of a small anecdotal experience of my own, but very specifically really feeling just a sense of calm within my emotional state. And it's cool, too, if my experience of tapping into the void, there's no planning involved. I mean, really, if you can get tapped into that, what comes through, it's almost like there's no need. It's almost as though there's no need for integration. It sort of just flows, for lack of a better way to articulate that. Yeah. Oh, Jeff got kicked off air. Hold on. Jeff, are you there? Oh. Might be having some technical difficulties here. Jeff, are you there? Well, let's see if we can figure out what's happening here. I will say, this has been a day like no other for technological difficulties. It's been quite interesting.
I've been having weird. Go ahead.
I just have to meet it with humor, and that seems to do the trick better than anything else. I just have to laugh at it.
Yeah, that's all you really can do. There's definitely been some interesting stuff happening on multiple levels. Technological, energetic. It's really interesting the way things have been working lately. Time is speeding up and slowing down exponentially. I was massaging earlier today, and usually it takes me about maybe 10 minutes to work through a shoulder, and all of a sudden it was half an hour later. And I was like, wait a second, what happened here? And just earlier, we were on a countdown for getting onto the show, and it just seemed like so much time in between it. Time's not moving faster or slower. Our perception of it is, and it's really interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on right now.
It's incredibly interesting. So I'm going to work on getting Jeff back online. Eric, if you'd like to talk about any of I know you've had some pretty interesting experiences recently, even just today, if you'd like to share any of that with our audience.
This is kind of what I was talking about with the interesting stuff that's going on. I went to Shasta not last weekend, but the weekend before that, and just the energy integration and the power that you could feel of literally the pulse of the Earth's energy. It's really interesting where all those power lines converge and what's actually you're able to feel with, because, I mean, I could get within about 50 to 60 miles of that mountain, and, I mean, I can feel it. Like, you know, when you're outside and you can close your eyes on a hot day and you can point right directly to the sun, that's how strongly I feel this mountain. And it was just some really, really interesting things that were going on there. We saw light ships and, orange and red orbs, like floating plasma balls and, all kinds of really cool stuff in the sky. And just the energy of the whole entire place, everybody was just really happy to be a part of something so beautiful and upgrading of the actual human awareness, and not just, talking about stuff, but actually applying it to you directly internally. And it was a really, really interesting integration. And so, I've been dealing with some energetic ramifications from that. I've been really, really tired, and I just really haven't wanted to do anything very much. But underlying all of that is burning need to do something. And it's really interesting what Jeff's talking about, how can we actually shift this into what we need to do, and this is exactly the line of thinking that I've been on with this. And it's just a really interesting conversation all the way around. But today there's just been some really interesting time glitches. Before we got onto the show, I was working on Sierra actually before we got onto the show, and so I had 20 minutes that I could work on her. She had some lymphatic stuff going on. And I would be able to work through a whole entire area, and it would only be 3 minutes that went by. And, we were holding on this whole conversation, and so it felt like almost an hour to get through those 20 minutes. There was more than enough time to, physically go through what she needed massaged and taken care of and stretched right then and there. And it was only 20 minutes, and we were just both kind of laughing about the time distortions, because she's been having them. She's a massage therapist as well, and she's been having them in her practice too. It's really interesting what's been happening. And then earlier tonight, I was doing some qigong, and the level of energy flow that I've been having in my body, it was stronger than anything else that I've done before. And I had my meridian flow completely hooked up. Everything, the cycle, the microcosmic orbit down the face, or down the front of the body, up the back of the body, that energy flow right there with the central meridians. That it felt like a raging river, and I connected it into my arms and my legs, and everything was just flowing with power and energy, and it was a major, major activation. I've felt stuff like that before, like the original time that I discovered the implant system to begin with, because of that energy activation where I removed the chakra caps and exploded into this Dantian energy. And that was the night that I figured out the system, and it felt like that. There's some interesting stuff going on, and all I can feel when I reach out is a sense of waiting right now. We're right on the edge of massive, massive changes across the face of this planet, and it's like we're waiting, because this is our show now. We're taking this back, and we're going to make something absolutely amazing out of this. And it's I just reach out, and this is what I feel. The energy is primed, and it's honestly, I feel like there's just an overshadowed, there's a catalyst or something like that needs to start. And I think this is exactly what Jeff is talking about. It's how do we shift into that consciousness instead of wanting to do something to actually do something? And, this is exactly what we've all been looking for. We've all been trying to, because we all know something needs to be done, but, you can't just sit back and hope somebody else does it. You have to actually get involved. You have to become part of the change. And when you see something that you want and then you apply your energy towards it, you're physically manifesting something that you are seeing energetically. And so, this is one of the things that it's, how do we shift it? It's the difference between, what can we do? There's nothing that we can do. They're too powerful. The systems are too powerful. So what can we do? I'm not living under this anymore. What can we do about it? And that's the shift that we need to find. And it's really interesting stuff that he's talking about here. I'm really enjoying this conversation.
Yeah, I've had chills multiple times in this conversation, chills of resonation. Jeff, are you back on air with us? Jeff? Well, I don't know what's going on. He is definitely on air, but we just aren't able to hear him. So I'm not sure what's happening there with that. I'm not incredibly technologically adept, I have to admit. So I'm doing my best with this being the one to try to work out technological difficulties, but I'm not the ideal person, I will say, for that. So let's see here. Well, we don't have any callers, and we can't get Jeff's audio to work. I'm going to try it. Jeff, I'm going to hang up one more time, and let's see if a call back gets you back in with us. Yeah, so just continuing to talk about energy. Let's see.
Oh, yeah, what's not to talk about energy? Well, I can give some basic kind of exercises or things that I've been doing and feeling lately. And first off, the Qigong. Shaolin Qigong is absolutely amazing. You can really focus on where exactly you want to start moving the energy inside your body, and through a series of movements, actually manipulate it. And I'm really thinking about making more videos about individual moves that you can do, because they're incredibly powerful for actually getting the flow started inside of you. And a lot of people are energetically insensitive. They can't feel, very much, they chi pretty much, the energy that you can project through your body and with your body, and so a lot of people actually can't feel that. And Qigong is one of the most amazing ways to actually get people to start feeling energetic flow through their body. Because a lot of people, we're expecting stuff like this to feel like we got plugged into a light socket or something like that. And you can work it up to that point. It's nowhere near as strong in the beginning. It could literally, you've got meridians that can handle a stream's worth of energy. You can't go, flooding it with the Mississippi, just kind of blow out everywhere. And so it's one of the ways that you can actually start developing that awareness inside of you, the way you can move things around. And so the Qigong that I've been doing it's Shaolin Qigong. There's maybe 13 or 14 different moves that you can do with it, and it's all directing energy through. And the longer you do this, the more buildup of a reservoir and the more energy you can actually move with your body. And I don't know, today I felt like I hit a resonance point, like everything was where it needed to be in balance with the lower Dantian energy, the heart Dantian and the Dantian in the head. And it just, I had chi flowing everywhere through my body. It was a really interesting experience. I'm still kind of like on the after effects of that, actually.
I can hear it in your voice, actually. I can hear that.
Very relaxed, and I feel great. I feel really good.
Well, I always love to hear that, Eric. Jeff, are you on air with us? Oh, I hear something. Jeff? I think we have some audio happening here, but I'm not sure exactly. Jeff, are you with us? Huh. Very interesting. Okay, so that was definitely his. It is technology. Yeah, we've had, I don't want to run through the boring list of the hilarious technological issues that I've had today, but hilarity galore. Jeff, with us?
Keep hearing a little something, then it's done.
Yeah, there's definitely a connection. Just no voice there. Hi, Jeff. You're on air. Huh. Well, I would take a caller, and we had a couple earlier on, but there's no one in the queue at this point. So, Eric, if somebody wanted to get into doing some Qigong, some Shaolin Qigong, and aren't really sure where to find those resources, is that something that someone would need to take a class in order to engage in? Or if they were on YouTube, are there some decent resources for people to start that practice?
So the person that I actually ran into, his information, the man's name is Wong Q Kit, WONG KIEWKIT, and he's a Qigong Shaolin master who lives in Malaysia. And he actually grew up in the United States and went to college here, and so he's able to translate the philosophical meanings behind the Chinese writings. And that's one of the major reasons why things like Chinese medicine we've never really truly understood, because they'll call a symptom, that's a wood or a metal symptom, and it never really translated. And so this is a guy who can really kind of translate the actual philosophical concept into English, and it's really a powerful thing when you start understanding what these ancient Chinese people knew about the body and just how everything, kind of works together. And he wrote this book called The Art of Qigong, that's CHIKUNG. And in this book, there's about, I believe, 10 or 11 Qigong exercises that give you the background of the move and what it does and what to actually focus on with the breath inside the body as you start to move this stuff around. Now, that being said, I was already pretty well versed with martial arts beforehand and moving energy with the breath inside my body before I came across this information. And so I was able to instinctively start doing this stuff. I do believe that you have to have somebody just kind of show you exactly what is going on live. So that's why I've been thinking about the video, because, there's only so much you can put across in text. You have to really, know where the energy is flowing inside of you, because some of these things, like, you can overload different meridians and stuff like that. So the concept of things along the lines of induced chi flow need to be known, and you got to kind of have chi moving through your body to a specific point before you can even start really applying that. But what it is actually it's where you let your energy body flow through the physical body and actually direct where it moves, and you can start moving chi through the meridians that way. And so if you do start overloading things, you can do the induced flow chi movements inside your body, and you can actually unload that and get that moving around. So, there are things that do have to be taught, but the basics of all of these are pretty easy. And once you get to the point to where you can move these things around inside your body, even just barely even feeling it, what you're doing is actually building up the meridian capability of transmitting information to the point to where they start to transmit a lot more energy and information through your energetic body inside the physical body, and you actually start to open yourself to these types of awareness. People who practice Qigong regularly for, 10, 15 years, these are the people that can look at you and they can actually feel what is happening inside your body with just the awareness of the way the chi flows. And, this is kind of the stuff that we actually deal with when we are working with clients, because we have to move the energy through the body and take it to wherever we need to go to do the remote work. And so we're kind of learning from the back end of a mountain that's already been the steps were carved into it, and we're climbing up the sheer rock face on the other side without really knowing the information on everything that these people knew. And, this whole society of the ancient Chinese, back when they were doing things and discovering things like this, it was a very pure time before, a lot of the stuff happened on this planet. This is when they had people who were dedicated to nothing more than the science of the mind. They were the philosophers, And, there's just all kinds of amazingly cool techniques, breathing patterns, things that they knew that is being passed down now. And I highly, highly recommend anybody pick this book and check it out. But, you know, there sometimes needs to be a visual aid for people who just can't apply that, because I've learned martial arts from books before where they describe the motions and stuff like that. And, you know, it's easy for me to translate, but to see it live done, it's definitely something that kind of needs to be looked at right there. So I'm definitely thinking about filming some of those right there.
Yes, yes, please do.
But,
please do.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to that. Okay, we're going to see if we can bring Jeff on here. Jeff, I'm going to bring you on air.
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Jeff. Oh, there you are.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, back again. Not sure what happened before. I just got cut off. I was midstream talking, and then it just disappeared.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's you know, it's just how it is when we talk about these important things.
Exactly.
Yes. So we've got about 14 minutes left of the show, Jeff, and no callers. So I'd like to really just open it up for you to talk about whatever it is that you feel like you'd like to talk about.
Okay. Well, I think I got to the point before I got cut off. I'd just gone through the emotional bit of healing ourselves and then working into the higher self, and that higher self trying to align that to you know, to use that as the essence to what our mission is that we tap into Prime Creator with. So I'd probably like to talk about how I working with that with myself and what I believe other people can work with as well. So what I found was in my area, I see a potential to actually work with what I call automation. It's what I do as part of my job. So I see two potentials here. That I see the potential for artificial intelligence and robotics and other areas to completely take over manufacturing around the world, which is going to cause some huge shifts in the actual things like employment with people and other areas. And I think the current ideology is with governments around everyone having jobs, and it's still associated to what I call slave labour. Most of these jobs in factories, people are glad and happy to have a job nowadays, but they're not understanding the concept of what that job actually is. It's a form of enslavement. And so I think the concept we're moving away from this whole thing that we resonate to about, you know, the money system and working for our lives and so forth like that. So what I would like to put out there to everyone that's sort of listening is, like, I believe everyone has a concept on what the future potential is outside of the current paradigms that we're living under, these structures of monetarian aspects and enslavement with our jobs and so forth like that. So it's like if everyone can think about what they actually want, what do they want to bring forth into this world, not just what's best for them in service to self, but what's more important, what's in service to others, what they envisage as being the best thing for humanity, and what they would like to see. The problem at the moment, unless we sort of activate a direction and put action into that direction, we'll continuously be hijacked and be entangled to a different direction. And it seems at the moment their direction is, and their ultimate goal is to turn us into basically transhumans. They win the game if this happens, basically. So they take our organicness, which is our creativity and our unknown potential, but if they can mix that with AI, they ultimately get control of the game. They get control of us, and we will be locked into basically a pattern of conditionality for eternity. So I think, to me, the message, without sort of bringing forth fear concepts, we have to find the way to change that modality, that change that thinking. Now, I'm sort of working from what I call the top down. I've thrown myself into the lion's cage because I can. I'm in that position. I don't fear that situation, and I, will continue to work that to try to see change at that higher level. And I'm sort of continue to do that. And so I ask everyone that's sort of working out there and in different jobs, I think there's room to plant seeds, and that's what's going to take. We've got to plant seeds of unconditional love. We've got to plant seeds of creative potential. And I think people still want to sit on the fence, take a back seat, and too scared to be judged by their peers, to be, embarrassed and so forth, but it's not a matter of being embarrassed. There's a bigger mission at hand. So once we can tap into our emotional state, have it relative to the prime data, each one of us at our higher level has the mission to accomplish too. Once we realise those potentials, it overrides our ideologies, fitting our peers, being judged. So my advice to everyone is try to find it, and as a collective, that's what's going to empower change. And I don't see it as that we don't need to ascend away from anything, because we already are who we are. We just need to transcend from the entanglement of potential.
Oh, well.
And I think we lost him again.
You know he's saying something important. So, yeah, so...
have you lost me again?
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, we lost you again. Okay. There you are.
Momentarily.
Upsetting the overlords.
So, oh, that's just such brilliant. I mean, all of this is just so brilliant, and it's so leading edge, and I'm so excited for people to receive this seed that you're planting here tonight within all of us, of the possibility of tapping into that unlimited potential and unconditional love and creativity. And I think it's important for people to know too that within this energy, the creativity, because creativity and unconditional love cannot have restrictions applied. Those are the two places that are really at this point sort of outside of the ability to be manipulated by the artificial intelligence or parasitic construct or overlords. Would you concur with that, Jeff? Oh,
yeah, exactly the point. I can't believe
Oh, sorry, say that
hear me
just
again?
one more time. We can hear you. It's just a bit choppy. If you'll just repeat.
Okay. So basically what they can't do is control anything that's unconditional. They can only control our... So as long as we're conditional, they can control what suits their purpose. But when we act in the position of unconditionality, which to us is the best descriptive point of that being creative, they cannot control that. They can take to the point where I believe they're even themselves mesmerised by it and actually sit back and watch what's happening because they can't tap into it.
We lost just a bit of that, but I think enough to continue us forward. So hopefully, Jeff, I'm really hoping that you will come back again and have another discussion with us where we can continue to go further with these concepts and expound and invite some people to join the discussion. It's just been really illuminating and really lovely. Thank you so much for what you shared with us tonight.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate it. We've all got a mission to do. And, like I said, I just want to contribute it. And my whole concept is about unconditional love and serving others. And that's what really resonates to me. So I really appreciate it.
And that is action, really. I mean, I think that an intention to strip away our internal conditions and ideologies and move into that space of unconditional love and service to others, service to humanity, that is action. That is activating. And that's a really good starting place for anyone out there who resonates with what we're talking about, but feels unsure about where to start.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good point.
Okay, well, fellas, 5 minutes left remaining. Anyone welcome to fill the time with any fabulous insights or thoughts that you might have to close us out?
Stay focused. Stay true. Like we're getting to some very interesting energetic times right now where the building of these frequencies can't help but start to make themselves manifest in the physical. And we're going to have some really interesting internal stuff that we're all going to have to be dealing with, and stay focused, stay true, remain who you want to be. You are a service to others, manifesting Creator God right here. And it's time to really wake up to it.
Yeah, there's no more room for engaging in the distractions. It's really, I keep getting this feeling, it's sort of like when you're, it's a runner poised and ready, waiting for the start gun to go off.
Yeah.
I really have a sort of a resonant or like a visceral feeling around that. It's a feeling of being launched or almost launching. Although what's happening with me lately is that time is stacking, so I'm having a lot of present and future sort of combining, and it's wacky, but it's also cool. But I agree with you. It's there's really no more room for resistance at this point. Whatever comes up from within, now is the time. Now is the time to meet it and heal it and clear it and stay focused on where we want to align, because where the attention is what gets amplified and multiplied. And so it's every now moment. The work is in the now moment. And any time that we get into any kind of future negative or past ruminations and out of the now moment, that's out of alignment. So just gently bringing ourselves back into the now moment, back into focus, doing the work in this now moment, and allowing that unconditional love to begin with ourselves. That really is the gas pedal. The unconditional self-love is what propels all of this work foundationally.
I would just like to add one thing to that, Beth. We each in ourselves, we actually know the answers. The knowledge is there. The experiential element is there within us. The problem we have at the moment, we have still so many attachments and ideologies. We can't get a clear vision. We want to see the steps. We want to be able to paint a picture of how it all works perfectly. But that's the beautifulness of creativity, is the unknown factor. If we actually knew what those steps were and how everything links together, it wouldn't be creative, it'd be conditional. So the thing we have to align to is be happy with the unknown bit. Be happy that you don't know what the outcome's going to be, because that's the beauty of creativity.
I love that. Jump in and without having to know what's down there. Brilliant. Just the next right step. Thank you again so much, Jeff, for being on the show. It's just been incredibly lovely. And thank you to the listening audience for joining us tonight live, and all of you that will be tuning in later to the archived recording. If you found your way to this recording or this broadcast, then there's, you're here for a reason. Thank you all so much, and Jeff, have a wonderful Thursday, and Eric, have a wonderful Wednesday evening, and we'll see you all again next week.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Guy. All love to everyone, and enjoy life.
Enjoy life.
Enjoy life. Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.